So when I found out 6 hours ago that I would be doing this, a lot of things went through my mind. First, I don't have a Juris Doctorate, and I'm not a representative from the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. I know. Then I realized I only have 5 hours, and I don't have enough time to get either of those things. This was then followed by Hot Fudge Sunday. That episode of Saved by the Bell where Kelly, Lisa, and Jesse all made that girl group and recorded like, put your mind to it, go. Okay, more specifically, in that episode, Jesse had the breakdown. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I'm so scared. And I was. But as I began my frantic search for caffeine pills of answers, I realized everything I ever needed to know about hate speech I learned from Saved by the Bell. We'll get there in just a minute. First, the censorship of hate speech is a necessity of our society for 2 reasons. First, the protection of hate speech as a freedom of speech directly conflicts with the freedom from harassment. And second, there are no long-standing consequences for it. It's already been done before. There's a precedent for it. First, in the division between competitive freedoms of speech and freedoms from harassment, certain dignities must be afforded to every person. The right to be freed from harassment must take precedent. First, censorship of hate speech is not just a restriction of those messages, but rather a protection against certain venues or channels. Sometimes what is being said isn't nearly as important as when, or where, or why, or how. And this can clearly be illustrated by Saved by the Bell. Remember how Jessie used to be a feminist, and she was always talking about the feminist ideals and about how she needed to be empowered, and she was always called Slater a pig? Well, her what became more important than the rest of her questions. So Jessie lost sight of some bigger picture issues and forgot that there were real people involved. So it took Slater dressing up in a ballerina costume, remember that episode where he danced around the mat, to show her the error of her ways. And I think she still called him a pig in the end anyway. Second, humans are symbolic creatures. The act of speaking is just as damaging as violent action. Words are just as important. It's not merely a disagreement we're talking about here, but disagreements that are motivated by hate. We can again turn to Saved by the Bell. Remember how mean Lisa used to be to Screech? It was ridiculous, right? Like, she was always, slamming him in front of everybody, calling him all kinds of names. And it took his benevolent action to show her the error of her ways. That by these displays of hate speech weren't always correct. And it wasn't until American Bandstand hosted their dance-off at the Max, and they did the sprain, that she learned the errors of her ways. Okay, 6 hours ago, I learned that. Traditionally, most instances of hate speech are perpetrated against captive audiences. Where are we going to go? STV. Saved by the Bell. STV. We're going there. We can see this when Zach is asked to identify his culture and display it to the classroom. And rather than do the work and actually take pride in his heritage, he's ashamed of who he is and hates everything about himself. And he gets up in front of the class and does so as he talks about being a member of the Cherokee Indian culture. Well, because it was a captive audience that would not receive the accurate information otherwise, the teacher removes him from it and it demands that he go and learn his real history in order for him to then come back and share with him the truth as Zach, Chief Running Shoes. That was his name. I always thought it should have been Preppy Who Stands with a Big Phone. Next, there are no long-standing ramifications for censoring hate, but great implications for not doing so. First, the U.S. Supreme Courts have created several legal precedents for the censorship of hate speech, specifically on college campuses and in the professional realm. It is imperative that the other branches of the federal government follow this lead. We can see this on a very special episode of Saved by the Bell, when Slater is forced to decide between going to Nebraska on a full-ride wrestling scholarship or join the Army and and follow in his father's footsteps by going to West Point. And while he already had the support of the Principal Belding, it takes that support to persuade the other superior forms in his life, his father, to see the light and the error of his ways. Next, other democracies have efficiently and effectively censored hate speech without the demise of the democratic system. The protection of the freedom from harassment does not guarantee the demise of the freedom of speech. We're going to go back to that firecracker Jessie. She was really active on that show. Remember when the oil company came in and was going to get everybody really rich? And Jessie was the lone voice that said, no, this is wrong. That there are other people being negatively affected by this. And she in turn got Lisa to chain herself into the protest. And then Slater and Zach. But because the major forces at the school, because not everyone could agree or could support this, it was too late. And I think we all remember the fate of Becky the Duck. She died. Next, the active censorship on the internet by most countries has created a surplus of hate speech on U.S. web addresses, because the filtering process is employed by most nations guarantees that the citizens of these nations will just move their hate to where it is free. You can see this in my favorite episode of Saved by the Bell, when Bayside went up against Valley in the cheerleading competition, and Valley was smart. They knew what to do. They protected their mascot and didn't allow anything hateful to happen to him. But not Bayside. No. They left poor Screech the tiger vulnerable, so that Valley could dump fire ants down his costume. And do you know how hard it is to beat Bayside with fire ants in your hand? I'm serious. After identifying both points, that there are no long-standing ramifications for censoring, but rather implications if we don't take action, and identifying that there is a division between the freedom of speech and the freedom from harassment, it is imperative to understand that we must act on this, and any action is better than nothing. A line has to be drawn because, unfortunately, it was drawn a long time ago. And it's easy for me to get up here and attempt to get people to learn through laughter. It's much easier than me getting up here and trying to educate through example. But I have firsthand seen instances where hate speech has led to hate crime or hate violence. And I have friends who have had their face drug across the cement as faggot is screamed in the background. I have friends who were awoken in the night with a bat, hours after being called a fag from their window. I myself have had to drop classes because I first-handedly received these. And because there is no guarantee that this doesn't happen, the only protection I have is your laughter. So I thank you for that. And now it is your turn to take action. We have two choices. We can walk out that door, or we can walk out this door. And by walking out this door, we can be so excited, oh so excited, to start that journey home, and to take one step closer to no one having to be so scared. Thank you.
Asbury, for your trip down memory lane with your numerous Saved by the Bell examples. Thank you. Okay, our final speaker of the night who opposes the proposition is Mr. Ed Yanka, who is the Director of Communications for the American Civil Liberties Union of Illinois. He appears regularly on television and radio programs throughout the nation to speak on issues ranging from racial profiling and the inequities of the criminal justice system to religious liberty and internet privacy. Also, Yanka writes and edits at the ACLU publication, The Illinois Brief, and has served on the staff of the American Bar Association and now sits on the Human Subjects Review Committee for the American Bar Foundation. Please welcome Mr. Ed Yanka.